Hello, I'm Maciej Mikos and you're watching World Talks, where every word matters. As Ursula von der Leyen is about to continue her mission as the head of the European Commission, the bloc faces new challenges with much emphasis put on competitiveness. On the other hand, Brussels is closely watching current developments in the US, where Kamala Harris is gathering support to replace Joe Biden in the race to the White House. And to talk about it and much more, we're joined by former Polish Finance Minister Paweł Wojciechowski. Morning.
Good morning.
So, first of all, last week Ursula von der Leyen has been re-elected as the president of the European Commission. She outlined her political agenda for the next 5 years, and she put much emphasis on a vision of a stronger Europe that delivers prosperity, that protects people, and that defends democracy. Oh, sounds very good. And she also added that our first priority will be prosperity and competitiveness. Now, is this something new, or is it just a straight continuation of her last 5-year term?
Well, both. Continuation because, she mentioned, for example, the European Green Deal, that she will continue with the targets as set before. Of course, that would be a different change, that would be clean industrial policy that would be developed, and then she will announce this policy, this clean industrial deal on the first 100 days after the commission is being set up. So now she will be working based on those political guidelines on the new agenda. And this new agenda, actually, when you mentioned, the first element is competitiveness, to boost competitiveness of the European Union. In addition to that, of course, there's an issue of defense, the security, both on the borders and the security vis-a-vis what's happening on the aggression of Russia to Ukraine. So those two issues will have to come up in the new agenda.
Right. First, let's focus on the aforementioned competitiveness, which needs a major boost. Now, I understand it's because of the global situation, that's because of China, that's because of the US. But does it also require some structural changes within the EU to make it more competitive?
Yes, definitely, because the competitiveness is a word not to mix with the word competition. The Europe was based on the paradigm of internal competition, of building the single market, but the globalization brought the struggle for competitiveness, which is a worldwide. Because if you produce a product in your own country, to be successful in the world, in the globalized world, you need to be competitive in a sense of pricing and quality of your goods and services. So the old kind of paradigm, I would say, the so-called Hayek doctrine, was based on the fact that we need to protect competition of the single market and penalize the state aid, for example, to the industry. This was the first element. Second element was that we need to obey the Maastricht, the Stability and Growth Pact, which limits the spendings from the governments for 3% of gross national product. And third element, that the budget of EU budget is fairly small, of 1% of GDPs of the member states. So altogether has been changed, with the pandemic, and then after the war, we remember the Recovery and Resilience Plan, yes. And Poland now is just beginning with the so-called KPO, which is the resilience plan or recovery plan and resilience plan to boost the investments, and that concept of so-called is enshrined in this called New Generation EU, which thinks about the new generation and exactly things completely different to this Hayek doctrine. So it's putting more money, actually the more subsidies with the objective of climate objective and digitalization. One. Second one is getting money from external own resources, so-called, which is the first issued bond by the European Union, and then, of course, being financed those obligations of the EU by own resources, which is the taxation, for example, the part of VAT tax or the plastic tax, or in the future the tax from climate certificates. So altogether, this concept has been already introduced in a way to make to kind of not to look at their own budgets only of the member states, but also looking on the overall pockets of money that the European Union centrally can distribute with using own resources.
Mm-hmm. Right. He also mentioned the clean industrial deal. Could you tell us more about it? And does it mean that we're about to replace the so-called green transition, Green Deal, with something else now?
Yes, exactly. This is a concept that was brought because of some critique of European Green Deal, and this is the adjustments, because targets will remain the same, but the idea is to look more at the industry and industrial base. So the Europe will have to at the same time decarbonize. Mm-hmm. And at the same time fight with the deindustrialization. So we'll have to put more money actually to some of the concepts of, for example, the so-called the big project of common interest, or some like in aerospace, in other places, to put some of the boost in technology. If you look at, you mentioned China and the US, of course, Europe is losing the ground in competitiveness to China and to US. In comparison to the US, if you take away the part of productivity that comes up from digitalization itself, mm-hmm. Then of course we are at par. So the productivity grows at the same pace in Europe as in the US if you take away digitalization. So if you add the component of digitalization, artificial intelligence, and all the applications of automation and robotization, then of course the Europe could increase competitiveness. And this is the main objective of industrial policy now, to look at where to put the money to bring the productivity up. So the productivity is the key word that we have to fight, and of course we cannot be behind too much, be behind the US and China as well.
Talking about the US, on Sunday, Joe Biden decided to step down from his race to the White House. You, as a person who has experience in foreign policy, do you think that who do you think will run now from the Democratic Party against Donald Trump? Is it Kamala Harris for sure? And if so, who could be her running mate?
Yeah, I've been working with the foreign ministry within 6 years under Tusk government, and also I've been living in the States, so watching very closely the US politics. And in fact, I'm very confident that Kamala Harris will be running against Trump. And the question, who will be running mate? I have my own kind of ideas, because I very much look at different candidates.
Share them with us.
Yeah, okay. I like very much that guy who's his name is Mark Kelly, mm-hmm. who is the astronaut and soldier, actually pilot, combat pilot, and he
also a great supporter of the Ukrainian cause.
And this is actually a figure in mm-hmm. a senator who's a figure. I mean, it's we know that J.D. Vance is also served in Iraq. 10 years later after Kelly served in Iraq, but of course he was just a regular soldier, Marine soldier. Now, Mr. Kelly is an astronaut and a combat pilot. It's something unusual, and I think this is his CV. Shows that he might be a very good pick for the running mate for the Kamala Harris.
An astronaut is also a great choice, but if not him, then who else maybe?
Well, there's probably that would be maybe some other candidates from the swing states. Mm-hmm. Talking about Pennsylvania, Senator Kelly is from Arizona. Michigan I ruled out because there's a governor which is a lady. California, Mr. Newsom is also ruled out because they could not come from the same state. So of course, and there's a discussion about the Minister of Transportation, Buttigieg. It was a very difficult name to pronounce. I think for other reasons, he doesn't have the posture. He's very popular, but he doesn't have a posture of Senator Kelly, for example.
Now, that may
maybe you
sound
have other picks, I don't know.
Well, that may sound a little like science fiction, but would you imagine such a tandem of Kamala Harris and the former First Lady, Michelle Obama?
No, because if you look at the support for Kamala Harris, the support is increasing from the Black and Latin American community. Okay.
Yes.
Very much, and that is actually going up, whereas dropping in comparison to Joe Biden is about white male. So I'm sorry. This is the demography.
Dynamics of politics.
Dynamics, and of course, so I think you need a white male to be a running mate, to show the strong posture, the fighting running mate with Kamala Harris.
Right. Now, well, as I mentioned in the very beginning, Europe is closely watching what's going on in the US. And the question is whether we'll have to spend much more on defense. In the first part of our conversation, we talked about competitiveness, investing in this part of the EU, as a matter of fact. Now, will we also have to invest much more in our security because, as it was mentioned by Kamala Harris, we must also invest more in our security and defense. That's her words. Now, on the other hand, the question arises here whether we should solely rely on NATO, or should we rather look for, should we rather, come up with a scheme to protect Europe with what we can actually do, not only relying on the Americans.
Yes, as you mentioned, Kamala Harris spoke about security. It's one of the key issues, and of course, vis-à-vis Ukraine, it's very important to Poland, our own security in hands of Ukrainian soldiers, but also, Ursula von der Leyen, before she was voted in the European Parliament, she alluded to this issue of security vis-à-vis the U.S. elections. She was saying kind of, although we cannot affect the elections, somewhere else in other countries, we can affect by action our own destiny in terms of security and defense. So she was saying that we have to rely as Europeans more on our own resources, build up the capacity, the capability. Of course, it will not come overnight. So NATO will still continue to be the main pillar of our security structure. But at the same time, there's a lot of discussion about the European defense strategy to boost also the capacity of industrial capacity of European companies by investing more in ammunition, in tanks, in whatever whatever arms are needed, rather than buying them all abroad.
Yes.
If you look at from the war, from over the last since the war began with Ukraine, around 78% of procurement was done from was addressed to foreign countries, to the European Union. So only some 20% was spent and benefited the European companies, including the beneficiary, of course, for the employment of in Europe. So So there is an idea. Of course, Poland even spent more on arms from the US and Korea. So now there's an idea to bring back the procurement through so-called EDIRPA, which is a common procurement scheme that would actually combine some consortia and would invest in European industry. And in the future, by 2030, there is a goal to target to have about 50% of the procurement addressed to European companies, and by 35, 60%. I'm not sure if it's realistic, but at least the direction is fairly known and very good for the European industry as well.
It very much seems there's no other way for Europe. Former Polish Finance Minister Paweł Wojciechowski, thank you.
Thank you very
much. And thank you for watching. That is all for now, and stay with us for much more here on TVP World.